our consciousness of time became so squeezed that it turned to become an exponential value that is rising all the time, faster and faster and faster with every day. Compare two films, for example, the duration of which is 20-25 years, and you would find out that films made 25 years ago are no longer able to be understood or accepted in the measures of time now. Any film that you see now, the camera have to move all the time so fast, up and down, all the time, cutting, editing, in a faster and faster rhythm. We no longer have the patience to understand the film that was made 20-25 years ago. If you would edit a film that took place 25 years ago in the measures and the values of the time today, you would find that you would be able to conceive only 1/5 of the entire film. The rest, you will not understand why you are waiting so much for the camera to show a man walking through a room. Why is he sitting after he walked down on the bed? Why he start to look at his watch? All these measures are being cut off, and now we became slaves of a certain understanding of time that is becoming so hectic, that is driving us again and again to lose the peace that we had before. It's driving us to become slaves of a certain exponential, of a certain march of civilization and evolution that cannot and never been able to remain parallel or remain in accordance with our human nature. Within each one of us, there is some sort of an eternal clock, an eternal time, and within that eternal clock, we prosper, we find peace, we find evolution, we find understanding. Nevertheless, with a life that goes on, with an external clock that all the time had to drive us faster and faster and faster, we are no longer able to retain balance and harmony. And thus, we had a lot of problems, psychological one, sociological one. No more love, no more compassion, no more understanding. We live in a hectic society simply because of our understanding of time. All the time we realize, we think that we have to build, to make, to create, to become a part of a gear in a huge machinery that have no soul, and yet is driving everyone under false titles to work, to make money, to have and have and have. All the time, every single day, every single hour, we are bombarded with advertisements to buy, to have, to take, to be. All the time we are bombarded in television, in radio, in the streets, in everywhere, to take and to have. All the time we are bombarded and reminded that we are nothing, that we are little, unless we acquire this and we acquire that, and we buy this and we buy that. Without those items, we are reminded all the time that we are not full, that we are not content, that we cannot be happy. We forgot the true theme of happiness. We forgot the true theme of compassion. Look around you. People are sad. People are depressed. The time for a new evolution has to take place. We can no longer think that we have to pay for light, to see, to pay for energy, to heat our homes, to heat our houses, to pay to drink. That is a concept that can no longer, because that is a concept that makes people all the time live within fear. And it is that fear that is driving the entire world at one point to rebel against a system that claims to be democratic, that claims that is serving the people, while at the same time it's only serving the richer. We can no longer live in a community that claims capitalism. That is a fact that had to die. The idea of communism, unfortunately, deranged and changed by people, sick people like Stalin and other people who took over in the Soviet Union under the pressure of a country like the United States. Such concept of communism was the only solution to be able to make a change in this world. Nevertheless, that concept was not able to see the light. That concept never had the true chance to show itself. The word communism comes from the word commune, which is communal. It means that if I have this camera and I'm living with other people, that we can share that. We do not need that each one of us have to have his own camera. We do not need that each one of us have to have his own car, his own television, his own. That is a concept so much building on feeding the ego, feeding the individuality in a world that we need so much to feel love and compassion and sharing. At the end, we are not individuals. And like Buddha said in his second truth, that individuality is an illusion. At the end, we are a community. What is the idea of being in a city? What is the idea of being in a village? If we cannot share to the last details all that could be shared, if we could not unite within a way of life that could feed us and give us compassion and give us energy and give us all of that through a unity. Now, in a world like the city, the entire thing had changed. We only live in a false understanding of community. We walk, we see each other. There's a shop selling here, there is a ice cream guy buying there, there is a bar at the last end of the street that is doing something else. But at the end, all of this needs money. There's no true sharing. You cannot go into a bar or a shop and say, hey, I would like to buy this shoe, but I can give you instead, for example, my shirt. Nobody will do that. We created a new God called money. We created a God that truly cannot serve us. We created a God that will enhance further and further our individuality. In a world we claim, we seek love, friendship, companionship, comradeship. Nevertheless, we are unable to do that. We live in a false world. That is the point of evolution. We had encompassed at this point. And that is a point which is very false. That is a point that is very sick. That is a point that is very different. And we need to be able to cross that in one way or another. If we are unable to cross that, the entire civilization, the entire thoughts of civilization, the entire bricks of which we assume we build civilization will fall like all the other empires that took place. We live in a world where values had been deeply exchanged, and the bottoms took over the top and the top took over the bottom. We live in a world where we assume that people like Jimi Hendrix and like Rolling Stones and like Bob Marley are legends, where in truth they only bombarded the world with sick music, but only bombarded the world with a reaction of a world that is truly dying. They only painted what they saw. They only brought out through what we claim to be music a dying world, perplexed with confusion, perplexed with lust of power, perplexed with money. And yet we assume that those people are actually legends. We build upon them. I was one time in a cafe and they were playing Jimi Hendrix, and I said, can we have some peace? And they looked at me and they said, but this is Jimi Hendrix. And I said, put a plant under Jimi Hendrix music and put another one outside in peace and see which one could grow. What other measures do I have except what I can go back to nature? What other measures do I have except those that are natural? None. Put a cow, milk a cow that had been listening to the music of Rolling Stones or Bob Marley, and then do the same with another cow that be living out in nature and peace, and compare the two kinds of milk. Put even water with such kind of music and put water outside in the stream, under the sun, in the river, or with chanting in a different way, and see the difference. We have no other measures to evaluate things. We have no other measures to evaluate things except natural ones, because if we do not go back to natural levels, if we do not go back to natural references, we would not be able ever to understand the dynamics of evolution. We cannot surrender to a certain kind of dynamics of evolution that is mental. We cannot surrender to something like that, because at the end, that mental thing is only a reaction of the mind rather than a belonging of that mind to a much more stronger and bigger forces, which is nature. We came from there. We are at the end 70% of water. We are the four elements. That's what we are. If we have a brain or not, that does not make a difference from where we came from. And if we cannot confess that fact, if we cannot really face that fact, that we came from there, we will turn to be completely different mutations. And that where is the dangerous clip, that is where is the dangerous chasm in evolution. We will still acquire a human body, we still acquire a face and a body and a tongue, but at the end we will not utter the truth. We will not reflect the truth. And we will not reflect the natural steps of evolution. And that's where we are now. Most of us are not humans. Most of us are mutations, but we do not want to confess that. We do not want to confess that we became a very sick race, racing all the time after money and oil and power and buildings and skyscrapers and luxury. All what we want is the easiest. All what we want is what could be, all what we acquire, all what we need, all what we fight for is what could be easier. Not what could be ethical, not what could be moral, not of values, but only what could make us feel easy, lazy, and not more. We live in a world where people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, a total idiot, became the governor of California. We live in a world where an idiotic game like football became the national and the most prestigious game in the world. Now, these are values that we have to face. These are values that had not took place through a natural rhythm. Those are values that people who had the lust after power and who had the greed to abuse the rest of the other people had created only to generate more and more power, more and more money, and yet became solid, and yet existed as if he had existed forever. We are unable to see, we are unable to compare, we are unable to measure such values to a much more lengthy measure of time and evolution.